Well, hello everyone and welcome to my kitchen table. Yes, we are back at my proper kitchen table, if you like. Listen, thank you all very much for watching my last little kitchen table. I know that it didn't have a lot of information that you were after. It was filmed before the news of Sébastien Ogier signed, was made public on Friday. But listen, thanks for watching it. Hope you enjoyed it. It was great to be down under. Did quite a bit of work down there last week, and you can see those videos in the coming weeks before Rally Australia. And you know what, it was fantastic to meet Harry Bates, a real rallying talent from Australia, and a young lad with the right sort of attitude, the right sort of ability, and fingers crossed that we'll be seeing a lot more of Harry Bates in the future. But really what I suppose you all want to hear, what I certainly want to talk about, is the news concerning Sébastien Ogier. Now, I have to say, a little surprised. Not that he's gone to Citroen, that hasn't surprised me at all, but a little bit surprised at the timing of the announcement just before Wales Rally GB. Listen, 3 rallies to go this season, 3 drivers in with a chance of winning the title. Ogier in the fight of his life. He is the one that has ground to make up on, now Loic Tanak, and in particular on Thierry Neuville. In the past, what we've seen Ogier doing is waiting till very much the last minute, if you like, end of the season, and then making his announcements. And that allowed him in the past to focus on what he had to do. I suppose the argument will be, look, this is now out the way. You have this news. You're not going to hound me every 5 minutes in GB, in Spain, and then Australia as to what my intentions are for 2019. That has a lot of merit. You have to say that has a lot of merit. So the announcement is there. Ogier, I am absolutely certain, will want to go back to Citroen as a 6 times World Rally Champion. He will want to leave M Sport on a high. That is an absolute guarantee, no question about that. And he will make every effort possible to win the title this year. The other thing you might say, you would be, I suppose, reasonable in saying, is that it frees Ogier up, doesn't it? It really does free him up just to absolutely go for it now. The deal is done. The deal is done with Citroen. He doesn't have to worry about that. It's not dependent upon him winning the title. If he wins, it's a bonus. He goes to Citroen next year with a number 1 on the side of his car. And if he doesn't win, well, he's got that chance next year. And who knows, it may be a 2-year deal. We don't know the ins and outs of that deal yet. But if he doesn't win the title this year, he can go to Citroen next year and he can create history to become only the 2nd man in world rallying to win titles, world championship titles, in 3 different makes. That really is, I think, a good part of the motivation for Sébastien Ogier staying for 1 more year. Don't forget, Rally GB last year, the end of Rally GB, we still had Rally Australia to come, didn't we? It was GB, then Australia at the end of the year. Ogier secured the title in GB, and we just weren't sure. We just weren't sure what he was going to do. If I'd had to put money on it at that point, I'd have certainly bet €5 he was going to retire. He's a huge family man. He loves his family. He loves the time with his family. He understands that you don't get a second chance at it. Kids grow up, and as kids grow up, you miss them growing up. You can't say, well, I'll tell you what, let's go back a couple of years. I wanted to see the point where my son took his first steps. I wanted to see the point where he spoke his first words. I wanted to be there when he went to nursery for the first day. I wanted to be at home when he came back showing me that he could write his name for the first time. Those moments you don't repeat. They happen once in a lifetime, and if you're there for them, they are the most beautiful moments in the world. If you're not, then maybe there's a degree of regret that you missed them. But what Ogier is doing is he's building a future for his family. And as I say, this time last year, I genuinely thought he was on the verge of retiring. It didn't happen. It must have been a consideration again this year, but Citroen have persuaded him to come back, to give it a go. French driver, French mark, French tyres. Oh, yeah, listen, we've seen a lot of that, haven't we, over the past decade or so with Sébastien Loeb. But Ogier going back, yeah, I think it's great for Citroen, I really do, because Citroen have been in crisis. A word I used a lot last year, a word I haven't used quite so much this year, and rightly so. Full credit to Citroen. The turnabout came when Mr. Boudard took over, and he is a man who is very focused on the engineering side of things, on the performance side of things with that Citroen C3 WRC, and he's done a great job. And there is no question that that car is now very, very capable of delivering a world title for Sebastian Ogier next year. Listen, we saw it in particular. We saw it with Mads Osberg, didn't we? Surprisingly, we saw it with Mads Osberg in Finland. Kris Meeke has shown us many times, really since, well, the latter part of last year, and before he was sacked this year, that the car had the ability, and he said it himself just before he got sacked, you know, we've turned the corner with this car. This car is now very capable. From what one of my esteemed colleagues has written, Ogier has tested that car, which is in itself astonishing, but a normal driver contract wouldn't allow you to do that until you were out of your contract. And Ogier is still under contract with M Sport, but Ogier is not a normal driver. His contract with M Sport will not be a normal contract, and it is very possible that he had a clause put into that contract when he signed it at the end of last year, allowing him, if the opportunity arose, to test another manufacturer's car. Listen, we saw him, didn't we, driving the Mercedes in the DTM series. So it is entirely possible that Ogier has driven that car, and it is entirely possible that with the continued commitment from Citroen to developing that car, that he sees it as a Hyundai beater, perhaps more pertinently, a Toyota beater, and an M Sport beater, making it capable of delivering that third, what would it be? It could be a sixth, it could be a seventh title, but in a third different mark for Ogier. He's already written his name into history. He already is one of the greatest drivers that we've ever seen. But that would really, really cement his reputation as perhaps the greatest driver we have ever seen, if he could achieve that remarkable goal and win with Citroen next year, or perhaps the following year. We just don't know. We just don't know what the terms of the deal are. But what does it mean? It means that Citroen have a lot to look forward to. But who's going to sit next to him? That is the big question. All this talk about Esa-Pekka Lappi. Well, listen, I can understand Esa-Pekka Lappi feeling a little bit uncomfortable at Toyota just now. That car is magnificent. The team are flying at Toyota. But Lappi's an ambitious young man. And what he sees is he sees Tanak in the ascendancy. He sees Tanak as the unequivocal, I think that's the word, number one at Toyota. And he sees Tanak staying in that position at Toyota. And that will mean for Latvala next year at Toyota that Latvala will play second fiddle. He will play the supporting role to Tanak, as will the driver who ends up in the third seat there. Right now it could be Lappi. Lappi won't be comfortable with that. He wants to be world champion. And he's in a bit of a rush to be world champion. You know, we forget he's been around for a little while. He's not getting old. That's not fair to say. But he is, his career is progressing. And he's won one rally. He won magnificently Rally Finland last year. But this year hasn't gone his way. So a lot of talk for quite a number of months now that Lappi is off to Citroen as teammate for Ogier. Strong team. Really strong team. The next question is, how many cars are we going to see at Citroen next year? We've seen two, haven't we, for the last two seasons? We would like to see three. Have they broken the bank to get Ogier? Are they going to stay with a two-car team? Very possible. Who would I have? Got a choice, haven't I? And I'm going to have a choice of quite a number of drivers. Lappi clearly being one of them. Breen, another. Osberg, might consider him. But then I might consider Hayden Paddon. He has said this morning, in fact, that no deal is done with him at Hyundai yet. He is still working on that deal at Hyundai. Sordo, has he got a deal for next year? Well, we're not sure. Elvin Heffens. There are so many drivers yet to confirm their programs for next year. So Citroen, if they do go with a 3-car team, yeah, I would like to see Craig Breen staying there. Craig Breen has done very, very little wrong at Citroen. And Craig Breen continues to do what he's done all throughout his career, which is get better and better and better. Craig Breen is a rally winner in waiting. It will happen, as long as he's given the chance. Is he good enough to be number 2 at the team? I think he is. And I think there's a nice balance there, because what Ogier will want a strong support driver next year. Ideally, he will want 2 strong support drivers. He's missed them this year. He's missed the drivers. He had Tanak last year, he had Evans last year, taking points off Neuville, taking points off the other drivers in the championship. He's not had that at M Sport this year, Ogier. He will be looking for support. And knowing Ogier and his ruthlessness, and he can be a ruthless boy at times, particularly when it comes to winning. It's all about winning for Ogier. He is a fantastic guy, don't get me wrong, possibly my favourite driver in the field right now. But he's single-minded, he's ruthless. He's determined, he wants to win, and he knows that to win, he has to have a complete package around him. He knows that the team has to work for him, and that, when we say team, we're talking, yes, the engineers, we're talking the whole of the development team, but we are also talking the other drivers in the team. So Lappi going from Toyota to Citroen could be like jumping from the frying pan and into the fire. Quite easily, couldn't it? Is he getting out of Toyota because of the situation with Tanak? Possibly. Would going to Citroen make things any easier for Lappi? Possibly not, because he would almost certainly, in fact, have to play second fiddle to Ogier. And if I'm Ogier and I want a driver who will support me consistently, I've got the choice of, say, right now, Lappi and Breen, it would be a toss-up. It would be a toss-up. It really would. But I'm just coming down on Craig Breen's side in this one. Such a difficult decision for Citroen. They've got their man. They've got Sebastian Ogier. They have got their winner again. And they've gone the majority of this season without a winner. Certainly since Kris Meeke left. But they've got the winner. They've got the man that can bring them another championship. But the jigsaw's not complete. He needs to have his wingmen in place. Wingmen, we don't know yet. As I say, I would be I wouldn't be surprised, because nothing surprises me right now in the championship in terms of driver lineups, but it would be disappointing, wouldn't it, to see Craig Breen not there in some form or another. It may be that we see a 3rd seat shared. It may be that Sebastian Loeb shares a 3rd seat with Breen. There's a lot of talk about Abu Dhabi and whether Abu Dhabi will continue in their title sponsorship of Citroen. Quite possibly, whether Abu Dhabi continues or not, might then have a big influence on whether they run 3 cars. I suspect it will. If they do run with the Abu Dhabi sponsorship, then Sheikh Khalid will clearly have to be involved, and Sheikh Khalid will do, as he has done this year, 3, 4, maybe 5 rallies. So it's all very, very interesting at Citroen. The dynamic there has changed. And I'm excited about it, because we've missed Citroen for the past 2 seasons. Yes, they won rallies last year with Kris Meeke, but they've not really been a force in the championship. They've not been fighting for the manufacturers, that's for sure. And they haven't given us a driver to fight for the driver's title. What is possible is that all 4 of the manufacturers will have drivers fighting for the championship next year. We are being absolutely spoiled this year with 3 drivers in 3 different cars fighting for the title. Is it possible that we could go to 4 drivers in 4 different cars next year? Well, let's continue along the Ogier theme. Ogier has left M Sport. M Sport are now in a position, aren't they? They really are. And a difficult position. What do they do? What do they do? They might well end up with a driver's title this year. They could still end up with a manufacturer's title, looking less likely. Because of A, the deficit in points, B, because we're just not seeing the performances yet from both Teemu Sunen, perhaps understandable, but Elfyn Evans, perhaps a little disappointing this year. So it's unlikely that they will take the manufacturer's title. Toyota are looking good for that. But they could have a driver's title. They will want to defend that next year. with Sunonen and with Evans, have they got the lineup to offer us a driver who will compete for the driver's title? I don't think so. I sadly don't think so. I don't think so. Listen, we still have 3 rounds to go, and this could all change. This time next week, we could well be celebrating the glorious resurrection of Elfyn Evans. That is entirely possible because Evans has the speed, he has the ability, he has the talent, he knows these roads. Something's just not clicked this year, and I don't know what it is. But he isn't the driver we all thought he would, or we all wanted him to be this year. As I say, that might all change. But as it stands, I don't think M Sport have a driver who can allow them to challenge for the title next year. The obvious one, and I think there's something bubbling, and there's nothing solid. I've said this before about the kitchen table. It is all conjecture, it is speculation. I will absolutely tell you if it's hard fact. But the thing with the kitchen table is it allows us, doesn't it, to have a look at what's going on and to put an interpretation on it and to try and work out from press releases, from tweets, from things that are happening and being said out there, who's doing what, going where, what teams are up to, what drivers are up to. And I think there is something happening with Kris Meeke. Now, not to give all our British and Irish rally fans too much hope, but I just get the feeling that something is going on. There is clearly still issues to be settled with Citroen. I don't think we're going to see Meeke in a car this year. I think until he is absolutely clear of the contract with Citroen, clear of anything that might be falling out from that contract, then it's unlikely that we'll see him in the remaining, 2 rallies, isn't it now? After GB, it's Spain and it's Australia. But he's got a part to play still in this championship, and he might have a part to play for M Sport. The rumour was that Meeke had spoken to all the teams. The rumour was he'd spoken to them, and that he was almost willing to drive FOC free of charge. Would you take a gamble on him if you were Mr. Wilson? Well, I've said it many times. If there is one man in the service park who is capable of taming the beast that is Kris Meeke, then it's Malcolm Wilson. It's a huge challenge. It requires a seismic shift in attitudes. It requires, someone of the, diplomacy of Kofi Annan, Ban Ki-moon, Boutros Ghali, head of the UN, those people, by the way, wonderful negotiators, wonderful people at reconciling. It's a Donald Trump, Kim Jong-un situation, isn't it? Kris Meeke's Donald Trump, Malcolm Wilson's Kim Jong-un. 6 months ago, they were going to war, and we were going to have the most catastrophic situation. Now there's a loving going on. It's incredible. Donald Trump saying he loves Kim Jong-un. So strange things have happened in terms of relationships. Malcolm Wilson could learn to love Kris Meeke, and Kris Meeke could learn to love Malcolm Wilson, because they can both do something for each other. Malcolm needs wins next year. Kris needs to prove a point. Kris needs to resurrect his career. Kris needs to show us all that he's not Crash-a-Lot Kris. He's way more and way better than that. So that's a possibility for next year. But the other possibility, David Evans, our number 1 rallying journalist in all of the world, he is the man who flagged the return of Petter Solberg to the championship, and a lot of people, where he wrote front page news 2-3 weeks ago, David Evans, Solberg's returning to the championship with Volkswagen. A lot of people scoffed, said, don't be daft, that's pie in the sky. It's happened. Evans also wrote recently that Mäkinen and Meeke are talking. Yeah, I can believe that, and I'd also heard that. I'd heard that from some relatively well-placed Finnish rally people. I think it's possible. I think it's possible that he could go to Toyota. Why would he go to Toyota, though? Because, again, he will have to play support role. He will have to support, certainly Tanak, possibly Latvala. It's a strange balance in the team. What I think they need at Toyota is someone that can deliver them points. There is talk about Huhtinen, and I am surprised at that. I really am surprised at that. Only because I think Toyota, if they don't win the manufacturers this year, they have every chance of winning it next year, but they have to get the balance in the team right. And I would prefer, if I was going for a manufacturer's title, you've got Tanak pushing hard for drivers next year, Latvala, possibly. Don't write Latvala off for the driver's title. I think he knows his position. His position is to support Tanak. But if Tanak doesn't have a great start to next year, and Latvala does, those roles could easily reverse. But then you need a third driver. You need a third driver to secure points. You need a Sordo. You need a Padden. You need a Bream. Maybe you need an Elvin Evans. Any of those drivers I would have before I would have Jari Huttinen. And that is not saying that Huttinen doesn't have the talent, because he does. He's potential. But I'm not certain that a driver with talent and potential is what Toyota need for next year. And I'm also not certain that they need a Kris Meeke. But it could happen, because listen, what has Tommi Mäkinen done since he gloriously returned to the championship at the head of the Toyota team? Well, he's done things differently. At every turn he has done it differently. At every turn he's confounded us. At every turn he has surprised us, and at nearly every turn he has delighted us. And he has, again, at nearly every turn, made the right decision. So we'll wait and see what he does there. But I think Meek's best chance of a return to the championship is not with Toyota, but is with M Sport. But it will require some shift in views from the two main protagonists there, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Meeke. I'd love to see it, wouldn't you? Wouldn't it be great? 4 drivers, 4 different marks, going hammer and tongs for the driver's title next year. Oh, last year was great. This year is looking greater. Next year, already looking forward to it. And we haven't got to Australia yet this year. Dearie me. So the only other team we haven't really talked about, I suppose, are Hyundai. Well, listen, Hyundai are safe with Neuville. He's done a deal, hasn't he? A great deal. 3-year deal. Fantastic deal with Hyundai. And rightly so. Neuville looks a complete driver now. He didn't look a complete driver last year, and he didn't win the title because of it. He now looks like the complete driver. His number 1 wingman, Andreas Mikkelsen, well, he's struggling a wee bit, but you'd have to say he's been jolly unlucky this year. His result in Turkey will show that he had a very, very bad event. But remember, he was leading. He was leading when a drive shaft went. And you can look back through a number of problems this year with technical issues that have cost Andreas Mikkelsen the chance to show us all what he can do. Mikkelsen will come good. I'm absolutely certain of that. Mikkelsen will come good. But Mikkelsen might have to accept that his role again next year is a support role to Thierry Neuville. Do you know what? I don't see a lot changing at Hyundai next year. I really don't. I can see them holding station with what they've got. Neuville, Mikkelsen, Sordo and Padden. As I said earlier, we know that Padden as yet doesn't have a deal for next year. Those negotiations are to be had, and they will be had over the next month or so, I suspect. Sordo, well, we'll assume that he's in the same boat. He certainly hasn't told us anything if he does have a deal for next year. So we'll assume that he is also still talking. If Padden's still talking, it means there's still an opportunity. But then who is Padden talking to? Is he talking to M Sport? Is he talking to Toyota? Is he talking to Citroen? Is he talking to all 4 of them? Possibly. Anyone who is out of contract at the end of the year, all 4 teams potentially still have positions to fill. So any of our plethora of drivers who are out of contract next year and who aren't talking to all 4 teams would be, well, a little silly, wouldn't they? You have to be talking to all of them. You can't assume anything at this point. And none of the drivers who are out of contract can assume anything. So I suspect the likes of Padden and even Sordo. Sordo back to Citroen? Possible, isn't it? Sordo to Toyota? For me, wouldn't be a bad move for him or for Toyota. Sordo to M Sport, less likely. Padden to M Sport, also less likely. But Padden to Toyota, yep, that could work. Padden to Citroen, yes, that could also work. The same can be said for Elvin Evans. It's fascinating, isn't it? We all thought, look, when Ogier makes his announcement, things will start to fall into place. They will start to fall into place, but it's not predictable. We can't say for sure who is going to end up where at the end of this year. Still very, very difficult. And what I suspect is that we might have to wait a little while yet to get the final confirmations of the 2019 lineups, because we might see one or two drivers, making a real push for it through the next two events. As I say, if, Elvin Evans goes and wins this one, Wales Rally GB coming up this week, going to be a great event, no question about that. If he wins it, if he then goes to Spain and puts in another sterling performance, goes to Australia, potentially wins that, Evans is the man that everyone's talking about. You could say the same for Padden. You could easily say the same, I suspect, for Sordo. So, it is difficult, and the top teams have their top drivers now confirmed, but it's those third seats, it's the sport drivers that are going to keep us, I think, interested between now and the end of the year. So let's wait and see. When I do have any more news, clearly I'll let you know. But we are looking forward, as I said, to Wales Rally GB. A number of changes to the route this year. It is going to be a fascinating one. So much riding on it, there really is. Weather reports are a little bit conflicting. Just a day or two ago, it looked like it was going to be warm and dry. Now there's a weather front coming in. Now, my esteemed colleague, Rebecca Williams, Bexy Wexy, has tweeted something this morning about the potential for snow come Saturday. Well, it's not impossible. It is not impossible. I do remember Volkswagen testing the new R5 car in public, or on public roads for the first time, if you like, in the Welsh Forest last year. And that, I think, may have been, I'm trying to think when that was. Was that October time? Later in October. Much later in October. And that test was cut short by snow. So it is possible. I don't think that's going to happen, though. Friday, still looking as if it might be dry. The rain, snow, we'll call it rain, heavy rain, coming on Saturday and then into Sunday. Friday is going to be the decisive day here. Normally in GB, you kind of want to be at the front. It gets wet, it gets muddy, it gets terribly slippery. The road deteriorates the further down you are. It rarely gets better in terms of cleaning. That might be different this year. If it stays dry between now and Friday, Friday's stages might clean. They might clean, and it might well be that Ogier in third place has a better starting position than Tanak and Neuville, and that might be enough. With conditions deteriorating, but I say it's all reversed, isn't it? Come Saturday, if you lead at the end of Friday, then you have potentially the worst of the conditions if we get terrible rain come Saturday. Listen, it's going to be a fascinating GB, that is for sure. And we'll know an awful lot more about where this year's championship is going this time next week. My feeling is that we will go to Australia with 3 drivers still in with a shout of winning. How close they'll be, I don't know, but I think we will still have 3 drivers come the end of the season, and that will be the most magnificent conclusion to what has been a fascinating year. So let's all wait and see. Listen, go out and enjoy Wales Rally GB. It is going to be fantastic. Thank you all again for listening to my ramblings. They were slightly rambling this week, today even, and I apologise if I kind of lost you occasionally there. I was thinking, as you could tell, as I was going along, but as always, thank you very much for watching from the kitchen table. If you're watching on YouTube, press the subscribe button. Do me a favour, press that subscribe button. Don't forget you can watch all of the old kitchen tables. There is that fantastic talk that I had last week in Australia with Harry Bates on YouTube. Watch it there. But if you don't mind, press the subscribe button. And we will talk to you all next week after Wales Rally GB. Who knows? There might be some announcements early next week. There will certainly be plenty to talk about after Wales Rally GB. We will speak to you all at a later point.